This is the story of how an obscure Jewish sect from the Middle East conquered an entire continent, not just through faith, but through power, persecution, and one of history's most successful propaganda campaigns. It's the year 100 AD. The Roman Empire stretches from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. Over 70 million people live under Roman rule, and almost none of them are Christian. In fact, if you were a betting person in the 2nd century, you would have laughed at the idea that Christianity could ever dominate Europe. Why? Because Christians were being fed to lions in the Colosseum for entertainment. The Roman world was saturated with gods. Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mithras. Take your pick. Romans were religiously tolerant as long as you paid lip service to the emperor's divinity. But Christians, they refused. They claimed there was only one God, and Caesar wasn't him. That made them dangerous, seditious, un-Roman. Between the years 64 and 313 AD, Christians faced sporadic but brutal persecution. Emperor Nero blamed them for the Great Fire of Rome. Diocletian launched what historians call the Great Persecution in 303 AD, ordering the destruction of churches, the burning of scriptures, and the arrest of clergy across the empire. Yet somehow, against all odds, Christianity didn't just survive, it exploded. By the early 300s, approximately 10% of the Roman Empire was Christian. That's roughly 7 million people, but they were scattered, marginalized, and had zero political power. Then everything changed in a single day. October 28, 312 AD. The Milvian Bridge, just north of Rome. Two armies face each other. On one side, Maxentius, the current emperor, with a larger, better-equipped force. On the other, Constantine, an ambitious general fighting for control of the Western Roman Empire. According to legend, and we'll come back to that word, Constantine saw a vision the night before battle. A cross appeared in the sky with the words, "In this sign, conquer." Whether you believe that story or not, what happened next is historical fact. Constantine won decisively. Maxentius drowned in the Dnieper River trying to flee, and Constantine credited his victory to the Christian god. The following year, 313 AD, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan. Christianity went from persecuted cult to legal religion overnight, but Constantine didn't stop there. He gave the church tax exemptions, funded the construction of massive basilicas, and convened the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD to standardize Christian doctrine. Think about that. In just 13 years, Christianity transformed from hunted minority to state-sponsored religion. But here's the twist that most documentaries skip. Constantine himself wasn't baptized until he was on his deathbed. Some historians argue he was less a true believer and more a brilliant political strategist who recognized Christianity's organizational potential. Whatever his motives, Constantine's conversion set off a domino effect that would reshape Europe forever. After Constantine, Christianity had imperial backing, but Europe was still overwhelmingly pagan. The cities were converting, sure, but the countryside, where most people lived, remained stubbornly devoted to the old gods. The word pagan itself comes from paganus, Latin for country dweller. These rural populations had worshipped the same deities for thousands of years. Their festivals marked the seasons. Their gods protected the harvest. Their sacred groves had been holy for generations. Christianity needed a strategy to reach them. Enter one of history's most effective tactics, cultural absorption. Christian missionaries didn't just demand pagans abandon their traditions. Instead, they did something far more clever. They repurposed them. Winter solstice celebrations became Christmas. Spring fertility festivals became Easter. Local deities were rebranded as Christian saints. Sacred pagan wells became Christian pilgrimage sites. The old gods' temples were torn down, and churches were built on the exact same spots. Pope Gregory I made this strategy explicit in a letter to missionaries in 601 AD. Do not destroy the temples of the gods, but rather the idols within them. Let these temples be purified and converted into churches. This wasn't tolerance. This was cultural warfare, disguised as compromise. But absorption only worked for populations already under Roman control. Beyond the empire's borders lived the Germanic tribes, Goths, Vandals, Franks, Lombards, Saxons. These peoples had their own complex religious systems centered on gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya. Converting them would require a different approach. Raw power. Christmas Day, 496 AD Reims, in what is now France. Clovis I, king of the Franks, steps into a baptismal pool. With him, 3,000 of his warriors are baptized simultaneously. It's a spectacle of submission and power. But Clovis wasn't motivated by spiritual awakening. His wife Clotilde was already Christian, and the church had promised him something invaluable: legitimacy. The Roman Empire had collapsed in the West in 476 AD, leaving a power vacuum. Barbarian kingdoms were emerging everywhere, competing for territory and authority. By converting to Christianity, specifically to Roman Catholicism rather than Arian Christianity, Clovis gained the support of the church and the Romanized population. It was a political masterstroke. Clovis's descendants, particularly Charles Martel and his grandson Charlemagne, would use Christianity as a tool of empire building. They didn't just expand territory, they expanded Christendom. In 732 AD, Charles Martel defeated a Muslim army at the Battle of Tours, halting Islamic expansion into Western Europe. He was hailed as Christianity's defender, cementing the Frankish kingdom's role as the church's military arm. But the real game-changer was Charlemagne. Here's a question they don't ask in Sunday school. How many people did Christianity kill to conquer Europe? Between 772 and 804 AD, Charlemagne waged a brutal 32-year campaign against the Saxons in what is now northern Germany. His goal wasn't just conquest, it was forced conversion. The Saxons resisted fiercely. They destroyed churches, killed missionaries, and fought a guerrilla war against Frankish occupation. Charlemagne's response was merciless. In 782 AD, after a Saxon uprising, Charlemagne ordered the execution of 4,500 Saxon prisoners in a single day at Verden. The massacre of Verden, as it's known, was designed to break Saxon resistance once and for all. Charlemagne issued the Capitulatio de Partibus Saxoniae, essentially a legal code that made being pagan a capital offense. Refusing baptism? Death. Eating meat during Lent? Death. Cremating the dead according to pagan tradition? Death. This wasn't evangelism. This was ethnic and religious cleansing. By 804 AD, Saxony was officially Christian, not because the Saxons had seen the light, but because they had seen the sword. On Christmas Day, 800 AD, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans in St. Peter's Basilica. The symbolism was deliberate. Christianity and political power were now inseparable. The church had its champion, and Charlemagne had divine authority. Western Europe was now functionally Christian, at least on paper. But there was still one major holdout: Scandinavia. The Vikings, Danes, Norwegians, and Swedes remained defiantly pagan well into the medieval period. They raided Christian monasteries, which they saw as poorly defended treasure houses. To them, Christianity represented weakness. So how did the religion of the crucified God eventually conquer the warriors of Odin? The conversion of Scandinavia wasn't a single event, but a centuries-long process involving trade, political pressure, and internal power struggles. Denmark converted first. King Harald Bluetooth was baptized around 965 AD, partly due to pressure from the Holy Roman Empire and partly to consolidate his own power. By claiming Christianity, Harald could position himself as a modern, European-style monarch. rather than just another tribal warlord. The famous Jelling Stone, erected by Harold, bears the inscription, "King Harold ordered this monument made in memory of Gorm, his father, and Thyra, his mother, that Harold, who won for himself all of Denmark and Norway and made the Danes Christian." Notice the order: military conquest first, religious conversion second. Norway's conversion was bloodier. King Olaf Tryggvason, who ruled from 995 to 1000 AD, used violence and intimidation to force Christianity on his subjects. He destroyed pagan temples, executed resistors, and tortured those who refused baptism. His successor, Olaf II Haraldsson, later Saint Olaf, continued the campaign. He issued laws mandating church attendance and Christian marriage ceremonies. Violators faced mutilation, exile, or execution. By 1030 AD, Norway was officially Christian, though pagan practices persisted in secret for generations. Sweden held out longest. The temple at Uppsala, one of paganism's most important sites, continued to function until around 1100 AD. Swedish kings resisted conversion because their authority was tied to the old religion, but economic and political isolation eventually forced their hand. By refusing Christianity, Sweden was excluded from European trade networks and diplomatic relations. The final conversion came gradually through a combination of missionary work, royal marriages, and pragmatic politics. By 1200 AD, all of Scandinavia was at least nominally Christian. We focus primarily on Western Europe, but the East followed a parallel path with crucial differences. The Byzantine Empire, the eastern continuation of Rome, was Christian from Constantine onward, but it practiced Greek Orthodox Christianity, not Roman Catholicism. This created a cultural and religious divide that would eventually split Europe. The Christianization of Slavic peoples, Russians, Poles, Czechs, Serbs, Bulgarians, occurred between the 9th and 11th centuries through Byzantine and Catholic missions. In 988 AD, Vladimir the Great, Prince of Kiev, converted to Orthodox Christianity and ordered the mass baptism of his subjects in the Dnieper River. Like Constantine and Clovis before him, Vladimir's conversion was strategic. Marriage alliance with Byzantium, access to trade routes, and the prestige of joining Christian civilization. Legend claims Vladimir sent envoys to investigate different religions: Islam, Judaism, Catholicism, and Orthodoxy. When they attended a service at the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, they reported, "We knew not whether we were in heaven or on earth." Whether that story is true or not, the point is clear. Christianity's appeal wasn't just theological. It offered art, architecture, literacy, and connection to the world's most powerful civilizations. By 1100 AD, Europe was Christian, but Christianity itself was fragmenting. The Great Schism of 1054 split the Church into Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox branches. Political disputes, theological differences, and cultural tensions had been building for centuries. When the Pope and the Patriarch of Constantinople mutually excommunicated each other, the break became permanent. Yet, despite internal divisions, Christianity unified Europe against common enemies. The Crusades, beginning in 1095, channeled military energy toward liberating Jerusalem from Muslim control. For 2 centuries, European warriors poured into the Middle East under the banner of the cross. The Crusades failed to permanently reclaim the Holy Land, but they cemented Christianity's role as Europe's defining identity. Within Europe, the Church ruthlessly suppressed dissent. The medieval Inquisition, established in 1184, targeted heretics, Christians whose interpretations deviated from official doctrine. The Cathars of southern France, the Waldensians of the Alps, and countless others were hunted down, tortured, and burned at the stake. By the 13th century, being non-Christian in Europe was not an option. Jews faced persecution, forced conversions, and expulsions. The last Muslim strongholds in Spain fell in 1492, ending 8 centuries of Islamic presence on the Iberian Peninsula. Europe was now thoroughly, violently, and uniformly Christian. So how did Europe become Christian? The answer isn't simple, and it's not comfortable. Europe became Christian through a combination of genuine spiritual conversion, brilliant cultural adaptation, relentless missionary work, political calculation, military conquest, forced conversion, and systematic elimination of alternatives. It took over 1,000 years. It required emperors, kings, popes, monks, missionaries, and warriors. It cost countless lives, both Christians who died for their faith during persecutions and pagans who died resisting conversion. The Europe we know today, its laws, ethics, art, architecture, literature, and holidays, is unimaginable without Christianity. Whether you see this as triumph or tragedy depends on your perspective. For believers, it's a story of faith overcoming persecution and bringing civilization to barbarian lands. For skeptics, it's a cautionary tale about how power and religion intertwine to erase cultural diversity. But here's what's undeniable. Christianity succeeded because it was flexible and strategic. It absorbed pagan festivals instead of fighting them. It allied with power instead of opposing it. It offered literacy, art, and community to people living in fragmented societies. And when persuasion failed, it used force. If you made it this far, you're clearly a history lover like me. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next documentary. What lost civilization should we explore next? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.